Okay, so you marry a convert. You've brought in. I mean, a happy result of your sin is that you brought someone to the gospel, right? That's got to be good in some ways.
Yeah.
And so you get married.
We got married. So that's the one thing. So me and Paul had decided our baby was due in August and our wedding was booked for August. We booked our wedding. And so I think there was like a 10-day difference. And I was like, we can't get married on that date because the baby might come first. I'd be 9 months pregnant. So we'd planned in our heads that we would postpone the wedding by a year because who wants to be 9 months pregnant getting married? Like, I wanted a nice dress. And so that was in our head what we were going to do. But when we told my parents, they were like, can we just ask one thing of you? Can you please get married before the baby comes? So I was like, yeah, that seems like, I don't even know why it didn't cross our mind. I think because we were at university and it's hard to schedule in a wedding. But we told them, I guess, anyway, it meant that we had to plan the wedding in 4 weeks because Easter was coming. We had an Easter break and we could get married in the Easter break and then we would be straight back to university, back to exams and whatever. And then the baby would be coming. So we planned the wedding super, super quick and got married. We didn't get married in the church. That is like one thing that hurt me. My parents, I don't know why, they never said you can't get married in the church, but it was like, go back to a registry office and get it done. That's kind of what I was told.
You know, I'm thinking that one of the reasons, maybe what might have charged the original pregnancy was you're pregnant in your hometown, in your home ward, where everyone you know can find out. It would seem like getting pregnant at the university, you're away from everyone. It doesn't have to be everyone's business, but that would also make sense why they didn't want to do it in the ward. You're a pregnant bride. They don't want people asking questions, and it just makes total sense why they would just go off and get married. We don't want to bring any dishonor or, judgment back home to where we live. Does that make sense? I'm projecting. I'm filling in the blanks, but
it was a case of go and get it done. Like, it wasn't,
let's have a wonderful experience. And
let's just get it done, get you married. At the time, I think I thought I wasn't allowed to get married in the church. Like, I was pregnant, I wasn't allowed to. So that wasn't an option. But since I've learned, obviously, that of course you're allowed to. Non-members get married in the church. I've seen pregnant people get married in the church. Lots of people get married. But at the time, I didn't know that was an option for me. So
you've hung in there, but that's a sad, that's maybe a suboptimal way to start the marriage. Maybe go get it done. That's not quite a celebration.
No, it wasn't. But then,
although weddings can be awful anyway, so maybe you saved yourself some expense and stress too.
Yeah, I mean, we got married. That was the important thing, and I'm not going to worry too much about the wedding day. But yeah, so we got married, and then we had our baby. But we were still at university because we were still only in our second year of university. So we had another year of university to do with our baby. And in that year, we kind of went to church, but we were never really, really like in it still. We'd go, you kind of here and there and everywhere in university anyway. You're like there for a few weeks, then you're home. We were obviously visiting family. So when we were with family, we'd go. But I wouldn't say that we were like really that kind of, in church at that time.
So did you later become more orthodox?
Yeah, absolutely. So we graduated from university, and then we moved to where we are now, and we've been here ever since.
So where's that?
So we're in the Chester ward, which is actually Chester is England, but we live in North Wales. So we're like on the Wales-England border.
Got it.
So so Paul, we graduated university. I still carried on with university. That was one of my parents' concern is when you have this baby, how are you going to manage them? And we decided Paul picked all his modules. And then I picked mine what would fit around his. His was the priority, of course, because he was going to get the job afterwards. So he got to pick all the modules he wanted to do. This wasn't his decision. He might think that I'm making out like he kind of railroaded. That wasn't the case. It was just the sensible. That was always the way it was going to be. So that was what was sensible. He picked what he wanted to do, and I just picked whatever fitted in around his timetable so that we could manage looking after our baby, because I didn't want to put him in any kind of creche or daycare. So we returned to university when he was 3 weeks old and lived on university campus. So yeah, like a totally crazy time. But looking back, like that is one of my life's achievements. Like I was at university, is away from family, with my new husband, my new baby, getting my degree, like carrying on. Yeah, and I think it was good. We did good, and it was good. I'm glad we did it. So we graduated from university, and then Paul went to law school. So he chose law school in Chester, which is back in my home state, because I wanted to be back near family. And the plan was I was going to do what I was always going to do. There was no other option. I was going to be at home with children, and Paul was going to go to law school. And so as soon as we moved back to the ward where we are now, our bishop was fantastic. He, he looked after us. He sorted us out. Paul got the priesthood. We went to the temple and got sealed. Everything just started happening like it should have happened. And we were kind of back on track, fully, callings, just kind of fully into it. This must have been like the beginning of Paul's experience of Mormon life. So yeah, things were good.
And would Paul admit now that he got baptized for you, obviously?
He said something the other week about that. Yeah. So that's the first time he's ever said that to me. But yeah, like, I think I've always known that. I've always known that ultimately, Paul's kind of very, so he didn't get baptized. Like, I remember the missionary discussion. So the first discussion, missionaries, they teach the first discussion and they say, so can we get you to commit to baptism? And he was like, whoa, what's going on? And I didn't expect that. He didn't expect that. And he was like, no, I'm not getting baptized. So his plan was never like, I'm going to definitely get baptized and do this. But the reality is that's kind of the way it was. So although he took a long time to get baptized, I wouldn't say that's because he needed to be fully converted, because I don't think he ever, in all honesty, was ever absolutely fully converted.
That was going to be my next question. Did he eventually reach a point of full conversion and orthodoxy?
So I would say he was fully involved. Like, he's been an elders quorum president, he's been a young men's president. He's had callings and he's done it all. And he saw the good in the church. And I would say that he always used to say to me, "It's good. So what harm can it do?" Like, I don't think he ever absolutely knew it. I knew it was true. I think he thought he had faith it was true, maybe, and kind of believed it was true, but he never was fully convicted. And he never, like, I believed everything. The prophet could tell me anything, and if he said it, I would believe it because he said so. Whereas Paul was more like, I'm not sure about that. And obviously, as a result, there were things that kind of bothered him more about church than me. But he was, we were fully in church. Like, there was no, our children were all blessed and baptized and all that sort of stuff. And he did have a period of inactivity for I don't even know how long, where things got on top of him and he kind of got a bit fed up and he needed a break, and he had that. But I told him at that time, like, you need to baptize our son. So you do whatever you need to do now, but you make sure you're back here by the time he's 8. And that's what happened. He did.
You gave him a sabbatical.
Yeah, that may not have been like fair or right, but yeah, he got, things used to bother him at church, like, people get up and they bear their testimony and they know it's true, and I think that would make him cringe. And things like, people would talk about the world, how bad the world is and how the people in the world, and that used to grate on him because his family are in the world, his parents are in the world, and like, he used to be like, they're good people, why do they talk? He just didn't like the way that we talk and the way that we are so sure of everything, and the way, so things would grate on him, and he used to get fed up of people, people that would thought they were so amazing. And so yeah, he needed a break. He wasn't happy at church, and I found it wearing that he'd come and he'd be miserable. And so in the end I was like, do you know what, just like, don't come for a bit. And so he didn't, and he stopped coming, and that was healthy for us, I would say, at that time, because it was hard. Like, I'd sit in church and cry. I'm not saying it wasn't hard, it was really hard. And I would still get kind of the people kind of saying, well, does he not care about you, like your eternal family? What's going on? And I'd get those sorts of questions from people and the judgment from people. But for him, it was good. But I did say to him, I expected him to be there to baptize our son. And that's what happened. He came back within maybe a year of, he gave himself plenty of time to start coming back into activity. And that was, let me think, that was 8 years ago that he came back and has been active since until now.
So for how many years after marriage were you guys active and, in the church?
Okay, so we've been married nearly 16 years. So, so like 15 years of like fully, every single week at church and doing all the callings and like totally. Obviously we went to the temple and got sealed and all that sort of stuff. So.
And you had 4 more kids after that first one, and that's a lot of kids still. It's not 9, but it's still a lot.
It is. We were going to have 2. We were happy. We were having 2, and we were absolutely done. Like, I love my big family, but I didn't want one. I was like, I want to be normal. I want to be different. I used to joke and say, I don't want Mormon written on my forehead, or I don't want Mormon written across my vehicle that I drive. This big vehicle that everyone knows you're a Mormon because it's a big bus. And I didn't want that. I wanted more for like a normal kind of, still in the church. Like, we were still in the church, but I just didn't want that kind of big family sort of thing. So we had 2 children, and then we had a big gap. And then I think I must have become like more Mormon. I actually remember like hearing a talk at church from a lady who had 13 children. Not someone I knew. I think it was like I don't know if she was a mission president's wife, or she was American and she had 13 children. I remember listening to her talk and thinking, like, who am I kidding to think 2 kids is enough? Like, I used to get that kind of, there are spirits waiting to come, and all that kind of thing. Like, my dad used to say things like that to me, and so we decided that we would have more. Like, I'm not saying that was totally a church decision. We may have had more anyway, but I definitely think the church played a part in our decision to go on and have more children, because I felt like my life with 2 children was easy, and church life shouldn't be easy. You're supposed to be kind of tried and tested and stretched. I felt like I needed to be stretched in order to become, like, better. So we went on to have another 3.
That's awesome. Any other thing you want to share about your story before we talk about when the faith crisis starts?
The only thing I'd say is that I probably didn't realize it at the time, but like the part the church played on my role as a mum, like the way I was brought up to believe that this is absolutely why I'm here. My job is to get married, have children, rear children. And I suffered, without a doubt, for years and years and years. I suffered with kind of low self-esteem, confidence issues, mental health. Definitely, like, at the time, I wouldn't have admitted it. But like, looking back, I really, really struggled with being at home, kind of looking after kids. My husband carried on. Like, we were at the same spot. We were at university together. We were at the same place. And then I had a baby and he carried on and I stayed. And I think it was really damaging to me at that time. I don't regret being at home with my children, but I kind of now think I could have done something. There is something I could have done to continue to develop myself, and that would have made me a healthier person. It would have made me a better mum.
Yeah, and that's tricky because some of that's just motherhood. Mm-hmm. Motherhood is, and I don't mean this to be sort of like falsely truthful, but I just think being a mother of many young kids is just one of the hardest things in the world. And so part of it is, were you able to really make that decision of your own free will and choice about how many kids would you have had? It's hard to know, like you said, and it's likely that the church influences that because they do encourage it, especially they did back then. But then also the way Mormonism teaches about motherhood, which is the mom's role, the woman's role is to have kids, as many as possible, and to stay home, and that it's evil or bad to work outside the home by choice. sometimes deprives mothers of what they need to be healthy and be a good mom. And so it can work out for some, but it can be just really excruciating for others.
I think,
and depression within Mormon, mothers, at least in Utah, is very high. So
yeah, and
you wouldn't be alone in that regard.
There's a stigma attached to that as well, isn't there? Like, there's a stigma attached in the church to depression, I think. Like,
right.
If you're depressed, then
you're not doing it right.
Well, you need to you've got your priorities all wrong. You need to focus on the Savior. You need to, if you had faith, then you wouldn't be depressed. And, if depression is kind of linked to unrighteousness, not kind of. And I remember Paul saying to me that, I should, if I had a part-time job, I would be better. I'd feel better. I remember always saying, you didn't understand. I wouldn't be better because I knew this was my job. So how could I feel better if I'm not doing what I need to do, even if it makes me better because I'm getting out of the house and I'm meeting people, and it might make me better, but because I know this is what I'm supposed to do, I'm like a double failure. I'm like, if I go out and work, then I'm failing at the one thing I'm supposed to do. So how is that going to help my self-esteem? That's all I remember saying to him, like, how can I ever feel better failing at the one thing I'm supposed to do? Like, this is what I'm supposed to do.
Yeah, absolutely. It's tricky.
Yeah. It is.
So I'm so sorry you dealt with that depression. That's just not fun.
No.
Yeah. So, okay, so you went 16 or 17 years, struggling, but doing your best. Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Is it time to talk about when the wheels started coming off the wagon?
Yeah, we could do that.
Is there anything else you want to talk about?
No, I don't think so. Nothing.
Okay. So it's relatively recent, right?
Yeah, very recent. So this has all happened starting maybe May, June last year.
So we're in January, so we're just talking 7 months ago.
Yeah. It's all happened really, really quickly for us. So I would say everyone has their issues, don't they? Everyone has their shelf, so to speak. So I always have had issues with, the obvious things. Polygamy, I've never been okay and comfortable with that. I've never been okay with the blacks in the priesthood. And I've had issues with priesthood leaders that have made me kind of question things. But ultimately, I knew the church was true. So all those things were just things that I didn't yet understand because I don't have enough, knowledge and understanding to. But I kind of just trusted that I'd get answers to those at some point. So although I wasn't okay with those things, I accepted them because I absolutely knew the church was true. So then I started to notice little shifts, little things here and there that kind of started changing. I think, everything's so black and white in church, in the church, isn't it? And as you grow up, you start seeing a bit more colour in things and you start seeing grey areas. And I think this is what started to happen to me. I kind of started to grow up and kind of see things a little bit differently. So I started to have little issues that were only little things. I used to think, why is the church so caught up on appearance? Why can't men have beards? Our stake president was big on telling men they had to shave their beards. And it used to bother me. I was like, why do they have to shave their beards? And he used to ask them, when did you last shave? If they had a bit of stubble. And I used to think, oh, why do they even care? To me, that didn't make any sense. That to me is kind of the opposite of the Savior. The Savior doesn't look at outward appearances. So why? So these are things that I didn't really care about in terms of, they weren't big deals, but they just made me kind of question a little bit. And I started reading things on Facebook. People would post the odd things about Brigham Young quotes, and I'd be like, oh, I don't know about that. And I kind of started to feel that's, I don't know. I just started to kind of feel uncomfortable about certain things that I'd read. Then we watched a program called Bride and Prejudice. You've probably not heard this program. So in this program, this is an Australian program. So in this program, it's couples who are getting married and they need to tell their families that they're getting married, but the families are going to be against the marriage. And so they're going to talk to the parents. And it's like, will they turn up on the wedding day? So in this program, there was a gay couple and they were Jehovah's Witnesses, and they were absolutely adamant the parents were not going to attend the wedding. Now, watching this documentary absolutely broke my heart. I was so sad that this family would not attend this wedding because they were Jehovah's Witnesses and they didn't agree with the gay wedding. Now, a few months earlier, my own brother, who is gay, had told me that he was going to get married. And he'd asked, would we attend? And I said, I don't know. Now, before he'd asked me, I'd always said, if a friend gets married, if I get any gay friends get married or my brother gets married, I'll definitely be there. I can support that. But in the spur of the moment, when he told me, I hesitated and I was like, oh, I don't know. I don't know if I can support that. I don't know if it's going against my beliefs. I'm not sure. And so I said I didn't know. And I watched this program and I saw how devastating it was to this couple that the family couldn't be there. And I felt like this was so wrong. I felt like, really, I couldn't believe this family were not going to go to the wedding. And I was like, hang on a minute, that was what I've done. And I hadn't really seen it. I mean, I hadn't told him I wouldn't go. And I hope that I since had got in touch and said I would, but I can't remember. But I remember just thinking, oh my word, it just felt so wrong. And my beliefs, my testimony had made me do that. And that's not it didn't feel right. That's not how I felt. That's not my true feelings. But I felt like in order to be good, that's what I had to kind of say. And it made me just kind of feel like maybe I was getting things a bit wrong. Maybe something wasn't quite right here. So then, so these are all little things. It sounds daft. Then I made a comment on Facebook there was a Facebook post about abortion, and I made a comment basically saying, I was once a teenage girl who didn't know what to do and was faced with that decision, and I didn't have one, but it was I was trying to basically say, people go through hard things, you don't know, people are judging and they don't know what's what. But I made this comment on a member of the church's post, and I exposed myself, I said that I was once a teenager who was pregnant and blah, 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 blah. Now, I'd never, ever been open to anybody about my past. In church, I kind of always felt like this secret that I was carrying. But I realized that when I put this post out, how much I was desperate to be open, how much I was desperate to be myself, how much it was so liberating. And I realized how much I craved authenticity. I realized how much I was never ever myself. I always thought that in church, that's where I was myself, that's where I was comfortable. And then I realized that I wasn't. I was saying things that I didn't necessarily think and feel because that was the right thing to say. And especially within my family, with family that were active, strong members of the church, I wasn't myself. And it that hit me, because growing up, my family was the place that I was always myself. And I was like, I can't believe that I'm no longer speaking out and able to be who I am. I always needed to give the right answer rather than the real answer that I felt. So then I started realizing how much I'd never formed real friendships, how much I had friends that weren't in the church, I had friends that were in the church, but I was never really able to be really myself with any of them, because the friends out of church wouldn't understand the Mormon part of me, and the friends in church wouldn't understand the bits of me that didn't quite agree with everything and fit in with everything. And I kind of realized that I was 34 years old and had never ever been able to form meaningful, real friendships, because I was always having to put on a front and be a person that I felt I should be, rather than be myself. So then I realized that I needed to sort this out. I needed to realize who I was, think about what I thought, and try and find a way to become the real me. So I decided that I was going to
Can I just say how much I love the idea of an innate desire for authenticity driving a faith crisis. So often it's like, I got the CES letter, or, my son came out as gay. No, I know that's coming, but I'm just saying,
no, yeah,
like for so many, it's just, it hits them out of the blue because of some dramatic thing that happens. I love the idea that at least a big part of this was just you feeling like you wanted to be a more authentic, vulnerable, open human being. I love that.
Yeah, so like at the time, I wasn't telling Paul that this was what was going on in my head, because
of course, yeah, you got him into all this.
I know he was having problems in church because he was young men's president. So there's a pattern with Paul. Last time he'd gone inactive was when he was elders quorum president, and this time he was struggling and he was young men's president. So ward council was his problem. Like attending ward council was like what caused issues. So he was kind of like struggling with church a little bit. So I was like, I can't tell him how I'm feeling, because I knew the second I tell him, he's like, woohoo, I'm out of here. Like that's what I knew would happen. I knew that it would enable him to leave. So I was like, I need to kind of figure things out in my head a little bit. But that only lasted a few days. I did tell him, I was open with him, and I kind of said, and he actually reread these messages that I sent him the other day where I first said it, and he was like, no way. So I kind of just decided that I needed to just I kind of realized that I've done this my whole life because I was born in it. And I've had no other kind of real choice in the matter. Although I could have chosen to leave, I never really thought about leaving. And I kind of used to think, if I wasn't born in it, would I have accepted it? And there's no way. Like I knew that there's no way I would have kind of been a member if I hadn't been born into it. And I always saw that as a blessing. I always felt like, I was so lucky that I was born in it, because I was not going to be good enough to join. I kind of thought that was like a good, but I kind of started thinking, maybe this isn't kind of what I want to do. So I thought, I'm going to open my mind. I'm just going to take a step back, and I'm going to kind of start looking at things from a more neutral perspective, and start to kind of see what happens. So in that, I saw a Facebook post, and I've got a print out of it here because I want to read it. So this Facebook post was one of these nice little quotes that people share on Facebook. So the quote said, I never want my kids to mess up and think my mother is going to kill me. I want their first thought to be, I need to call my mother. So I read that and it hit me, because I was like, it reminded me, it took me back to myself as a child, as a teenager. And I was like, oh, what kind of parent am I? Like, am I the parent that my children run away from, or am I the parent that my children turn to? And I realized that I might not be the parent I want to be, that maybe my conviction to doing the right thing, was to kind of be harsh and critical and like not the way I want to be with my children. And I now have teenagers. I've got 2 teenagers, and I started to think, like, are they able to be themselves? Are they able to think? Are they able to do do I teach them and give them any space to think, or do I just tell them the way it is and they do it? Now, my son was doing early morning seminary at the time, and he's a good boy. Like, he got up every morning and did his seminary, but I don't think he loved it. He just did as he was told. And I started to think, like, how much space am I giving my children to really develop and become their own people? And this kind of started to play on my mind a little bit. And I kind of felt like the more convicted I was with church, the more I knew it was true, the harsher I was. Like, the more critical and judgmental. And I was like, it just doesn't make sense to me, because that to me isn't the right way. That isn't the Saviour's way. That's not like. So yeah, all this started to play on my mind. So,
and again, I love the idea, and this is rare, of somebody's faith crisis being triggered in part by a concern of wanting to be the best parent possible, and being concerned that maybe the Mormon path, or the orthodox Mormon path, may not be the best approach to parenting. Like, I love this.
Absolutely. Because I've been asked so many times since leaving, people have asked me, like, if anyone that wants to talk to me, that's one of the questions. They're like, do you not worry about your children? And what they don't understand is this is driven by my children. Like, this has come about because of my children. I've not thought, to heck with that, I'm going to leave, and to hell with the children. I'm doing what I'm doing because I believe it's what's best for my children. And people don't understand that. And I can appreciate that, because a year ago, I would have been saying the same sorts of things. So yeah, like I started to think, so we told our children really early on, like we sat them down, the older two, and we told them, we're not sure about this anymore.
This is last year, 2019?
Yeah.
Wow.
So from the moment I told Paul that I was not really sure, he was like, let me tell you, I'm out. He was like, I don't really want to do this anymore. So he kind of decided that he was going to not come. So I kept going to church for a few weeks with the children, not my eldest. When Paul said he wasn't coming, the eldest was like, I'm not coming either.
The dominoes start to fall.
Like, it was crazy. So we sat our children down, we sat our older two down, and we said, like, we've got a few issues that we're not really sure about, and we're going to kind of start thinking about things. So my daughter cried. She got really upset. My son was like, cool, I'm done. Like, he was so happy. He was like, great, we can be normal. They were like his words, we can be normal. So I decided that I was going to go to church, and that I was going to maybe not just do what I'd done before, which is say yes to everything and buy into everything, but that I was going to start being more thoughtful and thinking about things and trying to like find my own way. So once you start kind of thinking, things start changing really, really quickly. As soon as you open your mind to the possibility that there might be more out there, or there might be something more to all this, like, things changed quickly for me. So I started to question things like the temple. I'd never really liked the temple anyway, but I started to like allow myself to say that I didn't really like it. Before then, I always just went along with it. Everyone thought it was wonderful, so I thought it was wonderful, and we did it. But inside, I didn't love it. And so I kind of allowed myself to acknowledge that I didn't love it, and that it didn't make sense to me, that I don't really get the point of learning what you learn in the temple. I kind of thought it just like, and then tithing started to bother me. I started to think, well, like, the whole plan of salvation is that we have agency, but do we have agency, or we have to pay? Like, there's no agency. You obviously could not pay your tithing, but then what? There's all sorts of repercussions. So I kind of started to feel like, wouldn't it be better to have like things that were like advised, things that the church asked you to do, but that weren't compelled, that you didn't have to do, and then you'd get a real measure of a person. That's kind of how I started to feel. Like, if tithing wasn't compulsory, then you would really see, how somebody's heart. You'd really see kind of how committed they were and how charitable they were, and rather than it being like, you've got to pay it or you don't go to the temple and everyone knows you. So I started to see like problems with things. And then I looked into these things a little bit, and I looked into the temple, and I looked into the tithing, and I kind of saw how things had changed. Tithing had changed over time, and the word of wisdom had changed over time, and I didn't really realize this. And I started thinking, so general authorities change things. So I started to feel like, well, if they change things, like, how do we ever know what's right? How do we ever know, like... So I kind of thought, maybe something went wrong somewhere. Maybe I was sure Joseph Smith was a prophet. I was sure he'd seen the first vision, and I was sure the Book of Mormon was true. Positive, like, that was absolutely, I knew it. But I thought, what if Joseph Smith was killed because he was bumped off by God because he was going on wrong? Or what if he wasn't wrong, but Brigham Young took things wrong? And all these things that we've had in the church since are not really what's required of us. So I thought, maybe I could strip things back. I could go back to the Book of Mormon and do what it tells me to do in the Book of Mormon, but those things maybe weren't required of me. So I would go to church. There was only a few weeks. I'm talking like this was really thoughtful over ages. It wasn't. It happened really quickly. But I thought, maybe I can go to church and I can just, I don't know. So I went to church one week, and I was being mithered for a what's it called, a ministering interview. And then the member of the bishopric wanted to speak to me because he knew that something wasn't right. And then somebody asked where Paul was, and they were like, "Oh, he's not coming." Like, and I started to realize there was no option. Like, to kind of pick and choose what you wanted to do in the church was not an option. Not if you've lived it. Not if you've gone from like being fully orthodox to being like, you couldn't just all of a sudden say, "Nah, I'm not going to do that anymore," because people would be like, they'd judge you and they'd say you've gone weird. And I kind of thought, oh.
It's kind of all or nothing sometimes.
It absolutely is. And our stake president, like, that is his talk that he shares from when he was called to, like, it's the one he reminds us of. Like, you've got to be fully immersed in it. Unless you're fully immersed in it, you're never going to be happy. You're never going to be. You have to, like, and I've made judgments on people who are like wishy-washy and, you know, don't accept callings or don't do this, don't do that. So I was like, you have to be pretty thick-skinned to keep going and kind of do it differently. But I was scared, like super, super scared. The fear started setting in, and I started thinking about the kind of person I would be. Could I really leave? Like, what kind of person would I be without the church? I was convinced. I remember saying to Paul, like, I don't know, like, if my goodness comes from the church. Like, I felt like it did. And without it, I was like, sure, like, I could stop going. But over time, like, what would become of me? You know, would I kind of start drifting? Because that's what we kind of taught. That's what we taught was going to happen. I started to worry about my marriage. Like, as far as I was concerned, we had a faithful marriage because we were in the church. Not that I thought I was going to leave and start cheating, but I thought he might. Like, I thought, without the church, what's going to stop him running off with someone else? So I had all these kind of, this fear, like what was going to happen, and eternity. I was thinking, you know, if there's a chance it's real, I'd best stick with it, because if I don't, like, this is huge. Like, I'm going to lose my family forever based on, you know. So, yeah.
That's the Pascal's wager that you may, even if it's not true, you'll be better off having lived it. So you may as well live it, because, you know, if you leave, things could go wrong. And if you stay, does it really hurt? And of course it can really hurt, or it can be great, but
yeah,
that's kind of Pascal's wager.
At the time I'd been living it and I was happy with it. And like, these questions kind of, they felt like they'd come out of the blue a little bit. And I was like, what's happening to me? Like, what on earth, what's going on? So Paul must have told his friend, about these issues. And his friend had already left the church years beforehand and had already discovered the CES letter. So Paul had been sent exactly. So Paul had been sent the CES letter from his friend, and he'd sent it to me, and I was like, no, I wasn't going to read it.
Had you heard of it before?
Never heard of it.
No. Again, 2019. Crazy. What, 6 years after the CES letter's released, 5 or 6 years?
Yeah.
And the Mormon bubble is so strong, especially in Wales, that you had never heard of it.
No. And I've had friends that have left over it, but I'd never heard of it.
That's so crazy.
Because it's all anti-Mormon literature, isn't it? So whatever people leave over, it's all anti-Mormon, and you just steer clear. You don't go near that stuff. So I was like, so Paul had read this and he'd started telling me stuff, and I was like, nah, that's wrong. You know, he told me that the different things, and I was like, no, they've got that wrong. So I was like, I'm going to read it. And I was like, I'm going to read it, and I'm going to read all the footnotes. I'm going to cross-reference everything. And I was like, oh. So I started off going down the kind of apologetic route. So the first thing that hit me was the accounts of the first vision. And I was like, yeah, but, you know, and I kind of did what the apologetics do. So, yeah, but, you know, he might have said this, just because he didn't say it all doesn't mean that it wasn't there. So that in itself was like, I could excuse that away. And then I'd hear the next thing, and I'd hear the next thing. And I could excuse every one thing on its own. But together, I was like, like crazy. Because up until that point, even though I'd considered my testimony, Joseph Smith was true. The first vision absolutely had happened. I've been to the Sacred Grove. I felt the spirit there. Like, I know this happened. the Book of Mormon is obviously true. Like, I know it's true. So this was like, just like, yeah, completely, like, my questions and my doubts that led up to this didn't prepare me for this. Like, I think people might think that I was looking like for a reason, like looking for an excuse to leave, or looking for something that would like justify leaving. That's not what this was. Like, I didn't come across it and think, woohoo, this is my ticket, I can go. I was still every bit as devastated when I read that CES letter, and the penny dropped. And I started to realize, I felt like I'd woke up in The Truman Show. Have you seen the film The Truman Show?
Oh, yeah. It's a classic. It's a faith crisis classic.
I was like, oh my God, could this be? Like, could this really be? Like, could it all? Like, and yeah, like, just completely.
Could it all what? Could it all what?
Could it all have been made up? Could it all be fake? Could it all be lies? Could it all be I just like I'd wake up every morning and I'd be like, did that really happen? Did I really read that? Did I really learn those things? Like, and I believed what I was reading, because they'd come from like good sources. Like, it was from the church sources. I'd gone back and I'd cross-referenced things, and to me, like, I could excuse any of the things. Like, for example, so Paul was like showing me pictures of Joseph Smith with his head in the hat, and I was like, it's not a big deal though. Like, I don't care if that's how he translated it. I was like, why haven't I seen it before? Like, I don't care if that's how he translated the Book of Mormon. Like, I can come to terms with that, but why weren't we just told that's how it was? And so I started to realize, like, I've been deceived, like, without a doubt. There's lies here. Like, why there's no reason to lie about something if it's true. So and then obviously the things that I had issues with before, like polygamy and blacks in the priesthood, I started reading more about them, and I realized that they weren't what I thought they were. Like, I'd made up some good excuses for why the blacks couldn't have the priesthood, and then I was reading stuff like that just didn't make sense, and it became apparent that yeah, they were just racist. Like, that's the truth. That you know, I'd kind of thought, you know, America wasn't ready for blacks to have the priesthood. You know, the church would never have been able to grow.
Yeah, those Yankees, whatever they call those Americans, were the reason. That's our fault.
I remember like deciding that the blacks and the priesthood was a trial of our faith. Like, the blacks couldn't have the priesthood so that people today could really be like tried how faithful they were. And then I started to realize that's crazy. Like, God isn't trying to trick us. He's not trying to catch us out. He's not trying to find reasons for us to fall away. So why would he like create something to make it hard for us to believe in him? But like, that's the sort of kind of things that I kind of told myself that might be why. Or, you know, people always say we don't know why. You know, the answers will come. So yeah, like, in all honesty, from the moment I kind of realized the CS letter, there was no going back. Like, I was out. There was no way. Because I was not in it for a club. I was not in the church for a club. It wasn't about that for me. I was in it because I absolutely knew it was true. And the second that was gone, there was not really anything left for me there. So I made the decision that I was going to leave. So we went on a family holiday to Egypt, and whilst I was away, I sent an email to my bishop and I said, I'm done. I'm out. You need to release me from my calling, and we're not coming back.
And when was that?
July.
Wow.
So it happened really quick. Like, yeah, really, really quick. And I, kind of from May, June, having kind of little niggles, to July being like completely done. Yeah.
Oh, that's just 6 months ago. That's so fresh.
See, I thought at the time, I thought, like, telling my family would be like the hardest part. And I thought, like, telling my family would be like the hardest part. And I thought, like, telling my family would be like the hardest part. And I thought, like, telling my family would be like the hardest part. And I thought, like, telling my family would be like the hardest part. And I thought, like, telling my family would be like the hardest part. And I thought, like, telling my family would be like the hardest part. And I thought, like, telling my family would be like the hardest part. And I thought, like, telling my family would be like the hardest part. And I thought, like, telling my family would be like the hardest part. And I thought, like, telling my family would be like the hardest part. And I thought, like, telling my family would be like the hardest part. And I thought, like, telling my family would be like the hardest part. And I thought, like, telling my family would be like the hardest part. And I thought, like, telling my family would be like the hardest part. And I thought, like, telling my family would be like the hardest part. And I thought, like, telling my family would be like And I had no idea, like telling my family was a breeze in comparison to like the last 6 months, kind of my own emotions of coming to terms with this. Like, I just thought, I don't know, like, I think, I don't know, I think my brain protected me from like what was going to come. Like, I think like when I found out the CES letter, I feel like I was it kind of maybe wasn't so real. Like I don't know, like I think kind of maybe when you're going through trauma, your mind protects you from it, kind of thing. And so I kind of just thought, well, I kind of was quite matter of fact early on. Like I've kind of felt like, okay, so we're going to leave. But the last 6 months have been really, really hard. Like I told my family, and I thought once I told them that that everything would be okay, that we'd like be able to move on. But like, yeah, after I told, like, the rest, it's been so much harder.
And your husband, he was just done. That you said that earlier, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, telling your parents is the terrifying thing. So how did that go? How did you approach it? How long did it take?
So my whole family were kind of pretty much in the same stake. So I knew that like we're not in the same ward, but we're in the same stake. So I knew that I would need to tell people because they would all find out pretty quick. So I started talking to my sisters. I told two of my sisters who were like, really, really actively hardcore in. And they were like, why didn't you come to us sooner? Why didn't you talk to us about these problems? Why, because I told them I was out rather than telling them that I was having doubts. And they're like, why didn't you come to us? I was like, there is no kind of coming to people with doubts. It's just like you can't do that in the church. You can't speak to people about doubts. It's just not a thing. It's like, so I just told them, I decided that it was not a face-to-face conversation. I messaged them. And so all this is going on over Messenger.
Like phone text or like Facebook Messenger?
Like WhatsApp.
WhatsApp. Yeah, that's very European. Okay. Coming out. I need to have an episode coming out to your European family over WhatsApp.
Is that not an American thing? But like,
WhatsApp is not an American thing.
Okay. Yeah.
Maybe it is. I don't use it that much.
No. Yeah. So I'm trying to think who I told. I decided I would tell like a few friends. Like, I kind of think, you're trying to think, who do you tell? Like, you've got a whole ward of people, who do you actually tell? And I decided that I would tell, obviously, my family and my 4 or 5 friends in church that I wanted to maintain a relationship with, the ones that I cared enough about that I wanted to maintain that relationship. So when I messaged my family, my sisters, I did kind of talk to a bit about it. And when I messaged my parents, I kind of messaged them and I just said, I'm letting you know, I'm leaving the church. I don't really want to talk about it. Like, that's what I said. I didn't really want to talk about it. It was too kind of, I couldn't go through it. It was all too emotional and hard that I just couldn't face talking about it. And also, what's there to say? Like, I couldn't tell them about the CES letter. I couldn't tell them about the stuff that I found out. So I was like, well, there's nothing I can't explain to them why. So I just kind of said, I don't really want to talk about it, but I'm just letting you know.
That's actually pretty smart. And it's actually very rare that people take that approach. They want to justify it, or they want to convert the others, or they want to redeem themselves. And all that backfires usually, not always, but it often backfires and is super counterproductive. And, the opposite of just saying, keeping it simple, I'm leaving and I don't want to talk about it. Ironically, that creates interest. But at a minimum, at least, it's still shocking, but it doesn't make them feel like they're under attack or under assault. So that's actually quite a creative and rare approach. So congratulations.
I since went back and said, I'm happy to talk now. So I told them initially I didn't want to talk about it. But then, obviously, I'm hearing from people that they're all talking about me. They're all gossiping. They're all speculating. They're all saying what happened. How did And so I was like, they're all making up their own reasons why, and that started to bother me. Because obviously, there's the reasons people think. You know, I've obviously been offended. I obviously wanted to sin. I obviously didn't want to keep up with, you know, the commitment anymore. I never really believed it anyway. You know, like all these things were going around, and it bothered me. It really bothered me that like people didn't know. I don't know why did it bother me? I don't know why it bothered me, but it did. Like it bothered me the thought that people thought that this was about like going out drinking, or that this was about
something superficial. Like
I was going to throw away eternity with my family because I wanted to sin, or because I had already sinned. Like I didn't want them to think that I'd already been doing things I shouldn't. Like,
right.
I felt, like I wanted them to know I was still me and I was still good.
Still the same person, really.
Like
maybe even a better person.
Totally the same person, but also like totally different. It's so weird. I can't even decide myself like where I fit with that. But yeah, so I kind of heard that there was speculation about why I was leaving. So I just sent another message to everyone and said, if you want to talk about it, rather than like talking about it and speculating, just ask me and we can talk about it. But of course, no one did. Like no one really wants to talk about it.
They don't want to know. Pablo writes, they never really want to know. And that's usually true. Sian, let's do this. Since we're coming up against the 2-hour mark, we'll I'm going to ask you just a couple questions, and then we'll keep people on the edge of their seats for the next half where we talk about life since then. Is that okay?
Yeah.
So let me ask you really one quick question, just not for any other reason than that it might be helpful for people. Was Mormon Stories at all a part of that journey? And if so, just in a couple minutes, how was it a part of that journey?
Okay, are you talking about the journey to leave or the journey since?
Up through where you've told in the story. Was Mormon Stories Podcast a part of that?
I discovered the podcast in probably August.
Okay, so this is after.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll talk about that next time. Is that okay?
Yeah, of course.
And then let's end with maybe the most important thing, something we should have started with. Maybe you can point your family to this end before we start. You wanted to make sure and explain why you are even doing this interview at all and why you're not doing it. And I apologize that I forgot to ask you that at the beginning, but let's start with that end. And why don't you just tell people now, before we get into more of the details, why did you even want to do this interview? What are your motives and what are you not trying to do with this interview?
Okay, so the first reason, the main reason I'm doing this podcast is because I value it. I really, really think it's so crucial in helping people. Like without the podcast, I don't know how I'd have got through the last few months. And so I'm doing it because I believe there's value in sharing stories, sharing our experiences, and we can help each other. So that's like the first, the main reason. But also because I kind of want a voice. Like I've had no voice. No one wants to know. No one wants to hear. Maybe my voice isn't that important. Maybe they don't need to hear, but it's hard hearing like the assumptions people make and the judgments that people make, but no one wants to talk to you. No one wants to have a conversation about it. So I guess it's my opportunity to speak about what's happened and how it's happened and why it's happened, and kind of, like have my voice out there. But it's absolutely not about it's not about persuading anyone else to leave. It's not about trying to, win people over to my side. It's like it's not a battle to kind of to destroy faith and to ruin other people's beliefs. Like that's just the last thing I want to do. I don't want to be responsible for anyone else's faith journey. And I don't want to hurt my family. Like I love my family and I don't want to hurt them. And I know that maybe in doing this, I may have hurt people because as far as they're aware, this is an anti-Mormon thing. I just want them to understand that that isn't what it is. Like
if they've heard of it at all.
Well, I think they may have heard about it. But to them, it's anti-Mormon. Like it's bad. And they need to understand that's not what it is. This isn't anti-Mormon. It's not bad. It's actually helping people. And that's why I've done it. It's not to it's not me going to the dark side. It's not me, jumping off at the deep end. It's me trying to do what I've always been taught to do, which is to do what's right. Like, that's so deeply ingrained in us, to do what's right.
And to be honest, right?
Yeah. And then we deal with the consequences thereafter. So I know there may be consequences to this, but I'm doing what's right, and I'll have to kind of deal with that afterwards.
And you're not trying to hurt the church or bring down the church or any of that stuff.
Absolutely not. I don't want to hurt the church. I do want the church to change. I'll say that much. I want things to change.
Everything, yeah.
It's not about destroying the church. No.
Everyone needs to get better. Churches need to get better. Governments need to get better. Individually, we need to get better. Like, what's wrong with that, right? Mm-hmm. And I'll just say my very last Mormon Stories interview was about someone leaving the church, resigning, and then getting rebaptized and coming back. Like, I just want to just say on just to reflect what you're saying, the purpose of Mormon Stories isn't to destroy the church or get people out of it or take it down. If, we just want to explore Mormonism and have a place where people can talk openly about it, good and bad. And so anyway, I'm loving this story, Sean. I feel super bad that I need to get home because dinner's ready and Margie's telling me to get home. So we're going to push pause on this interview. We're going to thank all our listeners who joined us on Facebook Live. Mostly we're going to thank you, Sean, for an exquisitely thoughtful and powerful story. And we are going to, over Facebook Messenger, because I have to run, we're going to schedule as soon as possible the concluding portion of this interview. How does that sound?
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Anything else you want to say before we end this episode?
Nope, we can all wait.
All right, Sean, you're awesome. What time is it there?
Oh, it is 20 to 1 in the morning.
In the morning?
Of course.
Oh, next time let's at least start at 1 instead of 3 my time, because that's really late for you.
It is late. It's all
right. Well, Sean, at least it's quiet, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, Sean, you're amazing. And I can't wait for part 2. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Thank you.
And thanks to all our listeners. We'll see you guys soon again for part 2 of this interview on Mormon Stories. Take care, everybody.